Hello and welcome to Sync and Flow, the podcast with me, your host, Josie Thorne. I am a Red Tent Women's Circle facilitator, a womb healer, and feminine empowerment coach. I have been guiding women to embody their true essence through womb activations and feminine embodiment practices. I started Sync and Flow to help educate and connect women back to the wisdom of their sacred womb space and cyclical nature. I want to help all women reawaken to the true power of the feminine that lives deep within them, so that they may cultivate a relationship to self that is rooted in pure trust, divine love, and a deeply intuitive connection to the body. Thank you for being here and taking the time to listen to this podcast episode. I hope you enjoy. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sync and Flow, the podcast. Today, I'm really honored to have Mishka Latib as my guest today. She is a fellow witch, healer, warrioress, and just pioneer in the Cape Town consciousness and spiritual healing space. Mishka, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I would love it if you could just give our audience a little bit of an introduction to who you are on a personal and a professional level, and what is it that you do in the world?
Sure. Yeah, this question has come up for me a lot. I'm actually in the process of trying to actually get on paper who I am and what I do, because I think, like you, sometimes it's a bit hard to actually define. But I got given the quote recently that if you don't define the box that you're in, everyone else will. And so I'm in the process of doing that. And a lot of people know me through my plant medicine work. And that's kind of where I suppose my outwards facing profession really lies, is helping people through transformational journeys, whether that's through mental health or spiritual awakenings, using plant medicines. I've also been a spiritual guide for a number of years, kind of helping people just through the interaction with spirit and the soul and what that really means, and grounding that into the physical reality. And I have my own herbal supplement range, which is something that it's my love child after helping myself off allopathic medication onto more natural alternatives that I now help people get off their medication using. And it's now, I'm going through a big expansion into a couple online stores and physical stores as well. So that's really exciting. And I've helped lots of people through microdosing. So that's kind of the majority of what happens in the outside. And other layers, I'm a bit of a witch. I do a lot of earth magic, and I do a lot of things in higher planes, let's say. That's a little bit about me and like what's happening for me at the moment. I'm also Psychedelic Society. So a lot of people know me through there, and it's kind of where we do a lot of the education around psychedelics and plant medicine and community gatherings and just anything related to consciousness expansion. Is where I'm at. Yeah.
Amazing. Oh, it's so dope, like watching our generation come through and almost like redefine what it means for us to do work in the world, and how it like redefine what it means to make money, and redefine what it means to just like service people on like that mental emotional health level. I think from like the jump from our parents' generation to our generation, it's so huge, and just for us to be able to be working with these sacred medicines and these sacred plants and entheogens, it's just like a really, I just get so excited by it, because I feel like we're living in unprecedented times, where this has really never happened before in Western society. And to see the influx of people that are interested in psychedelics and microdosing and, going beyond using these air quotes drugs as like just something to lose your mind to every now and then. It's like, actually, like, let's do it with intention, and let's expand ourselves, because I think, you know, we're starting to realize that there's something so much deeper than what we're actually being shown on the surface. And I think there's this mass revival, because, you know, the normal person, the average Joe, is also actually starting to kind of catch on to that a little bit. And you know, whether people are taking psychedelics at parties for very surface level reasons, you know, they're still going to have these like mystical kind of magical experiences, even if it's only in like a very subtle or small way. Yeah, I would love to hear about you know, your opinion on how psychedelics are being brought into the mental health space, and this revival of psychedelics in modern times, and kind of like how you see that coinciding with this massive shift in consciousness that the world is currently going through.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation, and it's one that I've been thinking about for some time. In terms of, I think it's amazing that, you know, these days the people that are contacting me in terms of the Psychedelic Society are really starting to change. It used to be a lot more curious students, and now it's basically like doctors, psychiatrists. It's the actual person, the average person. It's grannies with like sore backs that are reaching out and wanting to know if there's like something that could be beneficial for them. So the narrative is definitely changing in the mainstream in a really profound and very evident way, like on the ground, being able to see that.
Yeah, very quickly.
Very quickly. Yeah, very quickly. I think, yeah, I remember after Michael Pollan's documentary, How to Change Your Mind, came out. So like we went from getting like 2 to 3 emails like every couple of days to like 10 a day. It was, I was like, I don't actually have the capacity for this. But amazing that it's that's something that is happening, and people are starting to accept that this is something that, yeah, might be beneficial in many ways, and a lot of people are seeing benefit, and it's, you know, kind of spreading by word of mouth. And look, this helped me, maybe it can help you. And you know, I think it's really come with you know, aside from like the medical side of it, where people are actually saying that, you know, psychiatrists saying like people that they haven't been able to treat for 5 years using medication and therapy, you know, they contact a mushroom guide, and their client or, you know, patient goes there, and then suddenly they come back and they no longer need them. And I think on a deep core, like, you know, it doesn't matter who you are. If you see another human being that has been struggling for a long time and they're finally getting the help that they need, there's going to be a shift in you to realizing that this is actually, hold on, there might be something here. It's a bit of a tricky conversation at the moment, though, just in terms of like, so I'm also looking at it from the side of nature and the side of us being able to still engage on the ground in a way that kind of like yeah, it doesn't separate us from the fact that we are learning something from nature. We are finding the mystical in what was once mundane. Yes. And so I support this kind of movement towards the medical industry getting on board with psychedelics, and knowing that it's not something to be scared of, and that education around it can, you know, continue. But yeah, I'm also still pro us remembering that we're not the smartest species in the room, and at the end of the day, the plant might have something to teach us.
Oh, yes, I love that so much. And I think a lot of people, you know, we really are searching for answers. I really find that from our generation, like we're so hungry for like answers and something to grab onto that's outside of ourselves. And I think approaching, you know, these medicines with respect is like one of the first layers of assumption that we kind of need to take, because, you know, I don't call them drugs anymore. I call them medicines. I call them like expanders. And for me, I mean, my journey with psychedelic mushrooms, psilocybin particularly, has been really about surrendering to a deeper knowing, and surrendering to an ancient knowing, you know. And a lot of my insights from psilocybin have always come not specifically in the journey itself, but come after the journey. And it's almost like I see psilocybin, like these mushrooms, as almost composting your soul and composting, you know, the inner workings of your emotional body, your mental body, your spiritual body, and your physical body, and kind of bringing to the surface things that have been buried deep within me, you know, maybe even from previous lifetimes ago or from my childhood that I haven't consciously been able to access. And for me, that has been like one of the biggest gifts, is this process of bringing to the surface so that I can like work with it and release it, and so that it's, you know, all the things that are no longer serving me. Yeah, I have so much deep respect for psilocybins particularly, and yeah, I would love to know from you, like, what is your experience with working with psilocybin, especially around the microdosing, and you know, what benefits have you seen in your clients and kind of changes? Yeah.
Yeah, I must say I have such a strong relationship when it comes to mushrooms. They were my initial initiators as well, really breaking through
Me
into
too.
other realms. And
Yes.
yeah, I give so much gratitude and thanks to the path that they've taken me on. And yeah, the path that I've seen so many others, you know, go on when it comes to microdosing. I see you lighting your palo santo there. I have mine just sitting over here. Yeah, it's been fascinating to see how different people engage with mushrooms and kind of how the mushrooms teach. And that's something I've really come to learn over time, is they have such a fascinating way of being able to work with the psyche and bringing things up and really getting into some nooks and crannies that you know, and I've done a lot of self-work as well and use different modalities, but those little nooks and crannies, which even though we've been looking for ages, we just can't see, they're really able to kind of sneak in there and really get behind you know, like it's like the dust in the crevices, which I really, really appreciate about them. And you know, when it comes to microdosing, it's often where I'd start anyone who's wanting to work with mushrooms. You know, there's different ways of engaging with mushrooms. Some people believe initiation, 5 gram first time, that's the way to go. You just plant yourself and you go from there. And I think that it's a very valid choice. And I've definitely thrown myself off the edge a couple times.
Yes, safe.
But I also am here for responsible use and for consent and education.
Yes.
And so for me, you know, I use the analogy of learning to crawl before you walk, before you fly.
Yeah.
And I find that microdosing is sometimes a very good way to be able to do that. You know, it's also just like self-loving to the body and our nervous system. To say like, look, something's coming, and I want you to learn about this new substance and see how you engage with it, and I'm going to lovingly see how you respond to it. And so this kind of small dosing before we start moving into the higher dosing is a really good way to start just integrating it with our nervous system and our psyche. Yeah, it's just like getting to know each other before I say, like, if the mushrooms are a spirit, instead of like barging into their house, it's like first like maybe meeting for coffee, you know, and trying to just start the relationship there. That's kind of on like the spiritual side of things. And
Yes.
then in terms of like the physical side of things, you know, I've seen, yeah, besides like coming off medication, just like diet changes, different ways of interacting with you know, as a woman with the menstrual cycle, you know, focus, concentration, ADHD. I've got just like the amount of stories I have of people using it for all sorts of things, cluster headaches, pain, just there's really just endless use cases. So for me, it's more just like it's a subtle way of being able to get to know yourself and just changing your perspective. The main thing that happens with microdosing is like neuroplasticity, which most people are looking for, is like the ability to form new connections in essence.
And you have it.
Exactly. And so for me, I also say that microdosing might guide you to realizing that maybe you want to treat your body in a better way and you want to eat better food, but it's not going to drive you to pick and pay to go buy better food.
Yeah.
So you know, you still have to play your part even with the microdosing, and especially obviously with larger journeys as well, in terms of being able to integrate those changes into your daily lives. But it will help you make that process easier as well. So it might guide, make it easier, and if you work alongside it, you really can make profound changes in a lot quicker time, in my opinion, than
Yes,
without
I
it.
agree. Yeah, I feel like something about working with psychedelics in an intentional way, it really almost turns on like the sovereignty, this deep level of agency within the psyche, where it's almost like the soul sovereignty comes online, I feel like. And it's almost like your we talk about the ego so much, but it's almost like the ego can take a back seat and kind of allow the soul to start driving the car, and still have the ego there for like safety checks. Obviously, it's very necessary. I'm not one of those spiritual healers that says like condemn the ego, like let go of the ego. Like, no, we actually need the ego. It grounds us in this physical reality, allowing us to stay attached and grounded, and real and safe. But so many people, they don't realize that the ego can actually just take more of a back seat in their life, and we can allow the soul and the psyche and the spirit of this body, of this being that we are, to kind of guide us a bit more. And I feel like working with psychedelics in a intentional way can really help us start to let go of that intense desire for control, because that's really what the psychedelic journey teaches us, is that we actually ultimately have no control. And sometimes the
Very
more we
scary for
fight
many.
it, yeah, literally, and the more we fight that, the harder our journeys are going to be, the harder our experiences in the psychedelic experience and medicine journey is going to be. And so yeah, it's such a deep reminder for letting go of control, which is an illusion anyway.
Mm. Yeah, for me that's like such an important part, as we've just started putting together like we have a preparation guide now that people can go through in order to just understand how to best prepare for a journey. And one of the key parts of the guide is learning to surrender, is becoming comfortable with surrender. And a lot of people will tell you straight up, like, I have problems with control, I don't like being out of control. And yeah, it's something that you can learn through practice and doing practices, or you can learn it the hard way, and
Yeah.
life can can beat you into submission. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes, like, we like to be spanked by life, but sometimes the
Thank
easier
me,
approach.
Sky Daddy.
Exactly. But I do think that it's something that we can start practicing. And if there's anything that I wish people could take away from the psychedelic experience afterwards, is just that remembrance. That remembrance of what it is to be divinely connected to everything that is, and being able to trust the universe a little bit more, and being able to trust yourself a little bit more, because you know yourself in a deeper way. And when we start falling into that flow and that surrender, magic, that's when magic starts happening. For me, that's really it's a developmental and transitional step that I see a lot of people are going through right now, is stepping from that sense of control and flowing into this new kind of higher guidance, let's call it, and trust.
Yes. And it's also like, I feel like it's an ancient knowing that is, I almost see it as like all this wisdom is already within our DNA. It's within our body. It's within our psyche. I almost see the psychedelics and the mushrooms as like catalysts for activating what is already within us, because I almost see this revival of, and this massive wave of consciousness expansion that we're seeing in the world right now. It's nothing new. I feel like it is an ancient revival, and I love this saying that like the future has an ancient heart, because really what we're needing is this ancient revival of connection to nature, reciprocal relationships to nature, reciprocal relationships with each other, like more intimacy with ourselves, more intimacy with the other, more intimacy with nature as a living, breathing being entity, rather than something to exploit and take advantage of and to use for our own advantage. I want to just segue back, because I am who I am, and I'm very much in focus of like the womb and menstrual healing. And you mentioned something about mushrooms and menstrual cycle, and I wonder if you could just talk about that quickly, because I find that super interesting.
Yeah, for me it's been a very interesting journey with my own sexuality and my own womanhood, I suppose, my womanhood, and really just coming into closer connection with how I express in this world. And mushrooms have been a big part of that journey for me. I ended up meeting a few guides during my mushroom journey, so these are spirit guides. That kind of came in and started teaching me, and I've over years started teaching me even outside of my journey space, but they really came through during the journey space. And one was Bastet, which is an Egyptian goddess of pleasure. She always comes to me as this big, beautiful cat with gold jewelry. And
Wow.
Isis has been another one, another teacher of mine when it comes to the womb space. And really just like for me, it was an initiation into understanding the power of the portal that is within me, and kind of the ability for me to be able to birth things. And that for me, when I actually saw what the hell that was, I developed a deep respect, but then also, initially a bit of a shame, because I realized what in a way, a disservice I'd been doing to myself by not taking care of myself in a better way.
Mm.
And I always say that shame and guilt are only useful until we realize what's happened, and then the idea is to then work them out and drop them. And it took me a while to kind of get over that, and it required initially setting up some boundaries with myself in terms of how I treat my body, how I engage sexually, who I engage sexually with.
Yes.
And through that, my menstrual cycles have changed quite a lot. Also coming into the knowingness of like me being connected to the moon, that was like a big revelation to me.
Yes.
And how the moon cycles kind of coincide with my cycles and my shedding.
Yes.
And for me, it's like periods are psychedelic, full stop.
Yes.
Menstruation is psychedelic.
Yes. I love this. Yes.
Yeah.
Go down that
And
journey.
for me, it's like if you are a conscious cycler, if you know how to shed, if you've learned how to properly be with the death and the rebirth during a menstrual cycle, you will probably do a lot better during a psychedelic journey than most.
Yes, yes,
You
it's
know,
very much
so
about that
much
letting go of
similarity.
control and that surrender to the death process because yeah, you do have an ego death. Psychedelics are there to like allow all that you know about yourself to die so that you can step into all that you were meant to become. And most of who we're meant to become, it's like it's so far beyond our wildest imagination. And I feel like psychedelics very powerfully create that bridge between who we are and who we're meant to be. And they'll create that bridge, but ultimately it's the sovereignty of our soul that needs to walk over that bridge and to take responsibility. Because I think so much around using these medications, these medicines, is self-responsibility, because we've been so conditioned to, oh, you've got a headache, just pop this pill. Oh, you've got period problems, just take that pill. Oh, you've got depression, take this other pill that you'll probably be on for the next 5-6 years, maybe the rest of your life. And yeah, I would love for you to talk about how psychedelics in terms of mental health advocacy are creating this deeper level of self-responsibility that we need to take for our mental health, for our emotional health, and for the multi-layered approach, because just you are going to advocate for these medications, but I know that we both know that it's not the single fix solution, and unfortunately we have been brainwashed by the Western medical society to believe that everything can be solved with a one fix solution pill.
Yeah. No, that's something that, it's the symptomatic relief is, I think, what a lot of us tend to go for. And then, one thing psychedelics have shown me is that there are many ways, even though I've been, this path for years and I'm not on any kind of allopathic medication, there are still many ways that I turn away. I turn away from reality, I turn away from the light, I turn away from truth, whatever you want to call it. There's still many ways in which I turn away. And it's about also being gentle with myself, realizing that there's not everything that I can stare directly into the light. I mean, it's like staring straight into the sun, right? At some point, you've got to say, look, I have limitations. I have physical limitations, and I'm going to respect where I am. But I realize that there are ways for me to be able to approach that edge and understand what the edge is. And when I come to understand what the edge is, then maybe I can start pushing that edge a little bit further. I say that when it comes to regaining power and control over your life, one, there has to be a letting go of control, because there's we can't fix problems with the same logic that formed them. And so that kind of emptying the cup out so that it can be refilled is like a really, really important process when it comes to regaining back true power that comes from a different place, a place of knowing, a place of truth. And so there is like a shedding, but then also like a deep receiving that ultimately happens. And you know, as we start letting go of control and being filled up from a different source, that power that we get given is actually what I like to call like creator ability. It's creator consciousness in a way. And it's from that point where I really see, you know, the ability to start actually then creating change in your physical environment. We talk about manifestation. We talk about the ability to change the patterns within us that have landed us in different situations. I mean, at the end of the day, even if you look at addiction, for example, it's not a whole lot of bottles that are in chairs. The alcohol is not the problem; it's the person, and it's the patterns that have led that person to that place. And so, what a psychedelic can do, is kind of like it just shines a light and illuminates a lot of these patterns which have gotten us into the positions that we are. And from a mental health point of view, it helps us like de-weed our mental gardens. It helps us remove the patterns that are keeping us stuck, keeping us held back, keeping us tied down, keeping us in situations and places that are not for us any longer. But at the same time, it also, you know, by understanding how those patterns form, you also have the ability to start building new, healthier patterns for yourself. So not only removing ones when it comes to mental health, but also building ones when it comes to like then the next layer of empowerment and how do I start creating and weaving a reality. And then after that, how do I start weaving a collective reality for everyone around me, you know? And so it's like this process starting from how do I first get myself out of the shit that I've gotten myself into mentally and physically, you know, and then it's like, how do I start then building on top of that to start creating a new tomorrow, as I like to say.
Totally. And how do you see psychedelics being integrated into that process?
How do I see it being integrated into the process? I mean, it's foundational in terms of right now. I think we've gotten into a sticky situation, especially with a kind of a Western mindset, especially around like the individuation and individuality. I think that it's beautiful to have a whole lot of people that are now fully expressing who they are on an individual level. However, it's become very difficult to teach one another, you know, and for people to actually start listening to each other. And really, it's you know, this idea of a guru is starting to die, and everyone is now becoming their own guru in a sense. And so for me, I'm not fighting that. I say that that's true, and being able to listen to yourself at the end of the day is one of the biggest gifts that you can ever receive. But with that, it requires a lot more people that are starting to individually receive the truth for themselves. So that we can actually move forward, because otherwise we're not going anywhere. It's just a bunch of egos that are bumping up against each other. So to be able to stay in check, but also be your own guru, requires something as an intermediary to help that process along. And that's really where I see psychedelics coming in, is really activating that inner intelligence, that inner healing. If it's not going to come from the external anymore, if it's going to come inside, then have that as an activator that can get you there. And once that's activated, then you're all groovy, you know, then we start growing from there. And if we're each doing the work in our own silos, eventually when we are at a certain point in which we can start engaging with the other, we're all on the same page and we can start building together. And so for me, where the Western mind is at the moment and where we've come to as a society, I really see it as a powerful way for us to move together as a collective, but also respecting our own narratives, our own inner healing, our own intelligence, by facing ourselves in a journey, for example. And taking back our own mental health.
Totally. Wow, so powerful. Please, can you, I mean, that kind of segues me into kind of, I'd love for you to talk about the work that you are doing in group ceremonies. And I can't believe you just started doing all this magical stuff in Hout Bay, like literally 5 seconds after I moved out of Hout Bay and leave South Africa. I'm like, oh, damn it. Like, I just missed the psychedelic fun house community vibes.
You know what? I say that you had to leave. That's the thing. We can't have too many of us in the same space. Like, you left so that I could arrive.
Literally, I'm doing the work now here, bringing that African roots and energy to Europe, because God knows the Europeans need this deeply rooted earth medicine. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, like, it would be so nice for all of us to just like be together and be like being in the bliss together. But like, how else will the world go around if we're not all just like moving around and sharing all the
I know.
We've got to spread our magic, and I think that goes for everyone.
My heart.
Sure. Yeah. yeah, it's been such a beautiful experience having a space, really coming from a place last year of not knowing what I was going to do again, and so many like excuses. I was like, I really want to be doing this work. I really want to be sharing wisdom. I really want to be meeting people. I really want to be like helping other people flourish. And but I don't have the space. I don't have enough pillars to accommodate everyone. I don't have this. I don't have that. And but really earnestly coming from a place of like, I really want to do this work. And sometimes spirit comes through in a really funny way.
Yeah.
And I ended up in this house, and it's like, what you gonna do now? You got everything you need. You need plates, you got 50. You need cushions, you got 50 as well. And
You
so
need
it's
cool
really been
housemates, you got that.
yeah, like really just eating, just in the butter in a way. And I'm very, very grateful and very brave. I wake up every day and I'm like, how did I even land in this position? But I do know it comes from a lot of work, a lot of shedding, a lot of letting go, a lot of surrendering, but also the willingness and the true earnestness to step up. I think sometimes it's this idea of like, yeah, I'm gonna do it, but you're like kind of doing this. And
Yes.
so it's like really that like earnestness, knowing that, yeah, I'm actually gonna stay, I'm gonna step up. And it's been beautiful to actually have the resources and the space to be able to do that. And we've been the space has been filled with ceremony, workshops, community gatherings, and it's been a process to learn how to manage that and see what the community is actually looking for and how to do it in a respectful way. We're now going through like the beautiful like teething problems of bringing facilitators together, but when you have a group of people that have all been operating by themselves for a really long period of time and haven't had anyone else to check what they've been up to, no like eyes really peering on their work, that you kind of come with a bit of a shield, because you're like,
Yes.
suddenly you're like, have I been doing it wrong? Am I okay?
Yes.
And so going through that teething problem of allowing people to meet and interact in a way that also allows them to still feel safe, and respected, and knowing that you do have gems behind you and we want to learn from your wisdom. But yeah, maybe sometimes you haven't actually been doing things that are ethical or aligned, and we can also look at that, and that's
Yeah.
okay, because we're all learning together. Like we're in that stage now of like community starting to interact with each other and share resources. And I mean, this is the thing, I've been in this space for a while, and sometimes I'll be engaging with one group of people and then I'll have someone else that's like, oh no, I don't want to interact with you anymore because you're engaging with them. Like I'm here for collaboration, I'm here for unity, I'm here for sharing resources, and there's something that doesn't really suit me and I can't facilitate it and I can't hold this, it's out of my capacity, then I want to be able to say, look, that person can maybe hold you better than I can, and I know my limits. And I think that we really are in a way stronger together. And so this house has really been really just a big ass offering in terms of community and unity and coming together and being stronger together. So anyway, that we're like all able to live in this, what I'd call like this mini paradise, is the fact that we are in community, because
Yeah.
none of us alone can, for example, even afford this place, but
Yeah.
together, like, we can make it happen, and we all get a benefit from it. We all get a benefit from the space and the sun and the big screen and the three fireplaces.
Oh my
It's
God,
just it's such
amazing.
a magical blessing,
Oh my
and a
God.
blueprint. I believe a blueprint for others to do the same. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's something so powerful, like when you've been doing the work on your own on an individual level for so many years, and then you start coming into these like group healing spaces and workshops and women's circles and like whatever you ceremony spaces, whatever you're doing, and you realize like, fuck, like this is it, like this is where our trajectory is going, is like it's no more individual like I am me. It's like, actually, how can the we body work together? How can the we body heal together? Because and another one of my favorite quotes from my mentors is that wounds that trauma that happened in relationship needs to be healed in relationship, needs to be healed in community, because you can be so sovereign and so single and independent and like, I have no triggers and I've healed all my shit. And then as soon as you get into like an intimate relationship, whether that's romantic or platonic, or between a mentor and a mentee or whatever kind of relationship, you want to use, that's when the triggers come up. That's when, like someone else is able to shine a light on those dark crevices that you haven't been able to look at and say like, hey, like lovingly call you into deeper connection to yourself. I lovingly call you into deeper connection to this trigger, to this wound, to this edge. How can we hold hands and work on this lovingly together, you know, for the benefit of not only you, but also me, but also the group, we body community?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that for me is like the ultimate, is to be able to get into a space where we can actually start, you know, saying these things, but in a loving way. Like, you know, firstly, it takes the work to know exactly where you're coming from in a conversation like that. And then also the work to be able to create the boundaries, to be able to accept or create boundary as to receiving that. You know, and then to be able to have the, you know, the love to be able to be in a community for long enough, because I know community can sometimes drive me absolutely crazy as much as I love it. And then to start forming that ability to start providing feedback. And for me, it's also, I've been watching my own development and my own kicking and screaming. And sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I wake up and I'm like, fuck this, I'm going to Bali, like, you know, I'm gonna start a new life, like, and then yeah, after a while, like, the ego settles again and I come back into the remembrance. And this is where plant medicines, you know, come in again. Something that I heard from one of my mentors, which was really beautiful, is I asked him why he drinks ayahuasca so often, and he says, to remember.
Wow.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah. And for me, that's really, it is a part of it. It's part of that ongoing work, is to stay within the remembrance and hold a frequency. At the end of the day, like, you know, I think people that are doing this work act as frequency holders, and to try and keep an alignment and keep that integrity with that frequency, so that others might, you know, can rise into it and become a part of it, is really, I think, an important part of what's happening on the globe at this time. Yeah, in community for each other, to hold that integrity and that love and that support. So when someone falls out of it, that we're here, we're holding it for them to be able to come back. And if I fall out of it, I know that my tribe has got me at the end of the day. And then really coming from that love. You know, what would happen if the whole world, if everyone was operating from a place where they knew that they were loved and understood and they were allowed to fuck up? Like,
Wow.
sure, you know. So I really think that it's a different breed of human being that I think really gets born from a space like that.
Totally.
Yeah, which I'm excited to start seeing, which, you know, slowly some of us are getting to that point where we're actually, yeah, maybe giving ourselves the gift of being able to relax into that potential. It's still scary sometimes, but we're getting there. We're
creating it together. Yeah, exactly. And I think, like you said, like the more of us hold that vibration, that frequency, it's like we become anchors for the new earth, like living and breathing embodied within our system. And the more we can hold that pillar of vertical alignment, because I think that's another massive gift that plant medicines give us, is that like vertical access alignment, in terms of like, I receive my power and my wisdom from within, and also from, you know, source, God, universe, above, whatever you want to call it, rather than this like external, like reaching like externally outwards, you know. So coming from that like horizontal reaching to this like vertical like alignment, like I have got myself, I have a relationship with God above me, I have a relationship with earth below me, and I'm holding this like pillar of integrity, authenticity, and of genuine love, you know, and forgiveness and expansion. And if we hold that for ourselves, we can become these like almost like a lighthouse, like these beaming lighthouses of radiant energy. And I think that can be so fucking magnetic and so attractive, but also very scary for people who may not be in that space, you know. And that can be kind of triggering for people who are not in that space, because, you know, you become so self-assured because your relationship with source, spirit, God, and with the earth comes before any other relationship that you have, and your relationship with yourself, you know. And it can be daunting for, I think, people who aren't in that space. But as long as we keep holding that like that frequency, that pillar of like sovereignty, of strength, and I think this kind of segues me down like the God conversation, because for me, like, I entered like the psychedelic journey as an atheist, and I'm now like 5 years, 6 years later, like I, like, I'm not afraid to say the word God. Whereas, like, maybe myself 5 years ago was terrified to use that word, and I think a lot of people who go down this path start to kind of feel the same and start to kind of see like, okay, like, there is a higher power, there is something outside of me that I haven't paid attention to my whole life because of all this brainwashing and conditioning that we've received from the Catholic Church, from school, from like all these like institutional relations to what is our relationship to God, source, spirits. I don't know if you have any opinions you can share on that.
Yeah, for me, it's been a fascinating journey. And also, God has been a complicated word for me my whole life.
Yeah.
And, for me, my background, where I currently stand, I've got a couple of things, yeah, is one is kind of looking from the non-dual perspective, or even in Tantra, they kind of have this idea of there's no separation.
Yes.
Between us and the divine, and really just like diving into the mundane, even the dirty of life is actually where you find the most, divine. It's really, there's no separation. And
Yeah.
so for me, it's coming back to this unity consciousness and really experiencing that firsthand. And, after you kind of have a psychedelic experience of being confronted with that, it's really hard to try ignore that, but
Yeah.
also being okay with the fact that it's not this or that, it's
Yeah.
this and that. And that's the one place where I've had to learn a bit of like a patience and acceptance in myself when it comes to, especially with journeyers who have different perspectives and who have found divinity in very different ways to me. I'm going to say that for the most part, everyone that I've met that's touched any form of divinity, the same feeling that I have in me, in the way that I touch divinity, I can feel in them. We might be using different words, but we're talking about the same thing. We're pointing at the same thing, but our paths might be different. My partner uses this quote that there are many paths up the mountain, but we all get to the top and watch the same bright moon. I'm
Beautiful.
misquoting, but that's essentially
Yeah.
it. And it's really kind of how I feel, is that all these paths are pointing to something. And sometimes we get stuck on the words and the practice, and we forget that it's actually pointing to something beyond. And this is kind of where psychedelics come in for me, in terms of really connecting us to something else. I've got my entire cosmology, and I always tell people that I've got experience connecting from here to source and everything in between. And that's kind of sums up my cosmology when it comes to spirits and archangels, and just really everything in between. I did some initiations with the Andean tradition, and super fascinating in terms of the way that they understand the universe and connecting to source. And then for them it's very earth-based, so they speak about like Pachamama and Tata Inti, and like the elements which are foundational aspects of us. And they say by the time you understand that, and you understand that you have the capacity to dissolve your boundaries ever so slightly and re-merge with some of your external environment, and in that process you can communicate with the rocks and the wind. When you understand that, you're considered a child. You're literally now like a young, not even, like basically an adolescent in their eyes. And for us, that's supposed to be considered advanced spirituality. And so that's been an interesting thing for me, is to see how other cultures engage with God or source. And once I kind of found my own path there, it's been just a fascinating journey of watching people at all points of different paths, and how they approach the topic, and not judging, but just being interested. Being interested. Our gardener is a Christian prophet. And I
Wow.
often hear, yeah, my partner going outside to just listen, to just listen
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
hear what the different paths are.
Yeah. And somehow the use of these plant medicines really allows us to embrace that like childhood wisdom of curiosity, and to, because I think if there's one thing that, whether you're taking mushrooms, whether you're doing ayahuasca, whether you're taking LSD, you know, or anything in between, it's like there's one thing that a psychedelic journey teaches you is that we don't know shit. Like we don't know fucking shit. And I think the more you can allow yourself to lean into that massive question mark, exclamation mark, from a place of curiosity, excitement, creativity, rather than fear, I think that's when you can start to form your own relationship with, what does God mean to me? What does spirit mean to me? Like, what do all these things mean to me that have been so blasphemized and conditioned, and you know, it's like it's outside of you, and God is this big man in the sky, and he's looking down on you, and he's condemning you for every little sip of or whatever you're doing. And it's like no, we were here to form this new relationship, this receptive relationship, this reciprocal relationship. And yeah, if there's anything that a psychedelic journey teaches you, it's have that curiosity, because everything that we've been taught to know about the world, it's not wrong, but it's not the truth. It's not the totality of the truth. And I just love, and it probably comes from that neuroplasticity that you were talking about, is I just love how psychedelics really allow us the mental space to start asking these big questions, you know, and start getting excited about these big questions, not because we need to solve them, but because it's almost like the question unearths so much wisdom more than the answers ever will, you know. It's like the questions help to bring to the surface, like, what's my relationship to myself? What's my relationship to spirit? What's my relationship to the earth? You know, like, and having these relationships that are not based on this physical like evidence, you know. I think that's another thing that the psychedelic journey teaches us, is that we can receive wisdom and knowing without there being an obvious reason why, you know, an obvious reason as to, like, you know, there's no physical explanation as to why we do these things or why we see these things, or, you know, like, why do you know, why have you had these experiences with like these spirit guides coming to you, and you know, my journeys have been completely different, you know. So it's really, yeah, it makes me so excited, because the more people that can just start questioning their reality, the better, you know. Like, I love it low-key, like, making people uncomfortable now, to just like have the balls to like ask these questions, you know, because the more we can ask ourselves this, the more we can start to uncover and realize, like, hey, like, we're all just sitting on this like floating ball of rock in space, and all just trying to like figure it out. And there are a lot of different paths, and yeah, we can share that wisdom if we're open enough to it.
Yeah. And for me, it's been, you know, it's fascinating, because plant medicine for me has been one of the quickest paths that I've seen. You know, it's not the same for everybody, but it is a very kind of abrupt and direct path. Is you know, it's Changa journeys, for example, is sometimes people that are
People
curious.
don't know what Changa is. Can you just explain?
Sure, yeah. So Changa is a blend of smokable herbs. So it's something that you smoke, and it contains something in it called DMT, which is known as the spirit molecule. And in short, it's something that you smoke. It lasts for about 15 minutes, and it's incredibly intense if you have enough. And it really follows its name, where I feel like it can really just shoot you into another dimension. Let's put it that way. And it is different. I've seen a lot of first timers. I've taken a lot of first timers through the process, and it's interesting, because sometimes I'll notice them first. They see some colors and patterns, and then they have sensations in the body. Then sometimes they'll have a feeling of presence, and then next they might like experience like a being that's talking to them. And there's all these developmental stages that we go through. Some people just shoot straight through first time, no problem. But sometimes we do follow this kind of building up as the ego structure and the mind and the body and everything just starts getting used to the fact that we're shifting. But sometimes it's really powerful in just breaking all concepts of what you thought was reality and realizing that there's a lot more going on than what I thought. And it's kind of almost undeniable,
Yes.
you know.
Yes,
And
especially when you're seeing it in front of your very fucking eyes, and it's like you
yeah,
try to touch yourself, and you're like, nope, it's still there. It's still
still
there.
there.
Yeah, I had my first DMT experience. I mean, I've been a very proficient psychonaut for like the last 7 years or so. I did my first 5 gram journey in 2019 at the age of 22. And then I did DMT for the first time this year in May in Paris. It wasn't Changa, it was through a vape, actually. I wasn't sure, like I tried to ask the guy where he got it from, but he wasn't really sure anyway. And yeah, I just shot like straight fucking through after 2.5 hits. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I'd be very open to hear, or if you've ever had any of your clients have this experience. But I had like a full on sexual, like I was orgasming like in another dimension, and I actually like was squirting in another dimension, and it was the craziest feeling. And I woke up from the experience like touching my body, because I was like, am I wet? Like, did I just soak myself? Like, am I okay? And like I thought like all my clothes were still on, like everything was fine, like I was being trip sitted, but it was fucking insane. And when I tell people I squirted in another dimension, like I'm always not really sure if people like are actually gonna believe what I'm saying, because it's so hard to comprehend for my own experience, let alone for other people to explain that. Yeah, wildest experience of my life, like just so much activation, like these energy orgasms just like rolling through my whole body. Like I woke up in like a fit of laughter, confusion, and I was just like, what the fuck is going on? But it was like an amazing experience. And actually since then I have been more and more activated into my own psychic abilities and into my own ability to move energy and work with energy. And I've started channeling light language as well. And so I think that yeah, psychedelics can be these really powerful doorways, these really powerful catalysts to these very psychedelic, like psychic nature of like who we are, and also a reminder that like we are so much more than we've ever been taught, and we're so much more than we ever thought we were, because I think there is magic, and magic exists in this world. And I think psychedelics are a really powerful remembrance and reminder of that magic is real. And we are these multidimensional beings, and we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around, and we can access these other states of consciousness from a place of empowerment and curiosity rather than fear, because I think so much of humans psychic capabilities have been shut down because of fear-based narratives from the society. Sorry, I just wanted to go on a little tangent because it's a very funny story and I haven't shared it publicly yet.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. It's amazing. I'm like, that sounds kind of nice.
It was really good. It was really good.
Sure. It reminds me, I had a 5-MeO experience where, it was the most unifying experience that I've ever had, where there was just absolutely no sense of self. Absolutely annihilated any sense of anything. But coming back to realities, when I started, like the self starts coming back together, and you start being able to conceptualize what you just experienced. But what's quite amazing is managed to get a voice recording of myself during the experience.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, which I'm very pleasant. So after you do your first one, they say if you do another one, then you're allowed to video record yourself to see what you do. But for the first one, just like no pressure, you can take a voice recording if you want. And so I did, and yeah, yeah, sure. Just for reference for people, whereas Changa and DMT is a spirit molecule, 5-MeO is known as the God molecule.
Okay.
So whereas Changa is more like takes you through to the spirit realm and has quite strong activations there. 5-MeO DMT or Bufo, when it comes from the frog, is uh just God's space. So it's completely just unity experience. If you manage to have that breakthrough experience, sometimes you end up in the layers between as well. And yeah, the recording basically sounds like I'm either having the most like intense orgasm of my life or like the worst agony you've ever heard anyone in.
Yeah, probably both.
That's what I say, is it was literally both. It was like everything all at once. It was like the whole universe was like fucking me from like every direction. Like which was like incredibly like painful in a way, but also just like the most ecstasy I've ever experienced on a cellular level. And that was like the opening for me in terms of like, okay, how much pleasure can you handle? How much bliss can we receive, and how much can we be open to, and how can I open myself up to more layers of that, because it's like literally right here all the time waiting to be tapped into, you know. And
And I think
for
that's
me
a
as well,
testament to the nervous system, and to how much work that you and I both have done on ourselves to be able to get to these places. Because for everyone listening, like, this doesn't happen first timers. Like, this is really a cultivation of so much internal shadow work, nervous system work, working with, like, these parts of ourselves that we have shamed for so long. And it comes from that deep state of like embodied integration. And yeah, hands down, vagus nerve, nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic, like working with these very intense states, but from a place of regulation and learning how to handle more and more, because you have to start small, otherwise you will freak yourself out and you will send yourself into dysregulation. And so really it's about how can you do it like one step at a time, small little bits, and slowly you learn to hold more energy in your body, in your nervous system. You balance your chakras and you learn to have that balance between the higher spirit realms in the top chakras and the lower earthy realms in the bottom chakras. And how can you create balance and harmony so that you don't send yourself into a psychosis, because that is a very real consequence of doing psychedelics from an ungrounded, dysregulated state.
Yeah. And that's it. Like for me, embodiment is such a big part of it, and also just nourishing the nervous system, like you said. Iboga was actually what really taught me that, and it was so necessary to be able to integrate that experience. And that's also like where my tantric experience really came into the picture. Is Tantra is really about coming back into the body and experiencing life through the body, and really coming back into the nervous system, and going on a journey with using herbal supplements like ashwagandha to really help me kind of regulate and get my nervous system back in check has been a big part of my journey as well. But even in a spiritual space, besides like people that are dysregulated, they say like the mystic swims in the same seas that the schizophrenic drowns in.
Wow.
For me it's been it's been quite a journey in being able to watch people and myself come from this very like insightful, heady place where we seem to know a lot of things, but we aren't actually living that experience. And I call that like the gap. And the gap can actually lead to like severe issues and depression ultimately and that's why it's something that's also, it's like the shadow side of psychedelics people don't really speak about, is how sometimes it can actually get worse after a journey, not better.
Oh my God. I have very first-hand experience of that. 8 months of the darkest, depressive black hole I have ever been in after my first 5-gram journey. But then on the other side of that 8 months, like a completely new human. You know, I was like literally reborn. And so I
Yeah.
think it's like you have to have the support structures in place. And that's why I think like having, you know, talk therapy as a supplement of structure can be really beneficial to,
Mhm.
you know, working with psychedelics as well. And, you know, having that support in the form of mentorship.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, for me, integration, this is where like things like community come in. Because, you know, one thing happens, you come into a journey, you decide, I'm going to do this thing. And, you know, you have this profound experience, you learn a lot about yourself, and you go back into your everyday life and you go back to your family who you haven't told about your journey, and, or they can't understand and they're quite judgmental. Then suddenly there's the gap appears. You know, the gap between what you know to be true and what you've seen and what you've felt and who you know yourself to be and who you are right now and what you're experiencing right now. And that gap is, yeah, it's a killer. It's a really big killer. And that's really where, like, you know, support, guidance, you know, some people want to come back for another journey after they've received a lot of insights. And I'm like, no. Try life coaching, maybe figure out how to make the changes. How do you start seeing in the external world what you know to be true on the inside? And for me, that's liberation. That's
Mm,
true liberation.
mm,
Mm.
wow,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Mm.
Oh, wow, what a powerful conversation. I really feel so lit up by everything we've just chatted about. Please, can you tell the audience about your offerings and how they can find you, and if they want to journey with you, work with you, one-to-one capacity, group healing capacity? Yeah, please share that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been so much fun. Actually, I love having these kind of
Yeah, me
conversations.
too.
Man. So in terms of being able to get hold of me, you can contact me via Instagram, and I'm Spirit Guide Mishka on Instagram, Spirit Guide _ Mishka. And yeah, then my higher beings, my supplement range is called Higher Beings, and you can find that in different stores and also on Instagram. And Psychedelic Society South Africa is where the psychedelic education and events happens through. And yeah, if you would like to work with me personally, then I say book a guidance session. That's really the go-to place in order to start working with me. And it really just gets me to get to know you a little bit more, because that's really important. People come to me and, you know, I have a lot of people that contact me and they want to work with me, but sometimes they're not even sure why. Like I had someone contact me and they were like, I had a dream about you, and I'd never met them in my life. And they were like, I don't know why I'm here, but I know that I need to meet you and I need to speak to you. And I've had this, you know, countless times. And for me, that's quite normal. Like that's cool, but let's first then spend some time in a session to get to know each other. And maybe I can do a reading. I also do readings, divination readings. And from there, we can figure out, like, am I working with you spiritually? Are we talking about psychedelics? Are we talking about mental health? Where are we going together? What journey are we destined to be on together? And then we can go from there. So those are the places that people can find me and get hold of me. And
Amazing.
yeah, learn about my offerings.
All the links in the descriptions. Thank you so much, Mishka. This has been so much fun. And honestly, from one witch to another, like, just thank you, thank you, thank you. I honor you so deeply for the work that you're doing in the world to help really like shepherd this this expansion of consciousness, and do it from a deeply embodied place, especially as a woman, a womb bearer, you know. And yeah, I honestly just thank you, thank you, thank you. I see you,
Yeah.
sister.
Sure. And thank you. Thank you for this work and this podcast that you've created as well. Yeah, it's been an honor to watch you shine as well. It's been beautiful watching your journey as well, coming into your own strength, your own power, and things are activating. And just for your authenticity, it's been like such a beacon to honestly be able to see you sharing authentically. And like what's actually going on, and also the growth. It's been a big lesson for me in that it's all good to share the amazing things once they happen,
Yeah.
but seeing the journey is also really just part of it as well. And that's been, yeah, I'm very grateful to you and your sharing in that process.
Thank
So
you,
keep doing
sister.
what you do. It's beautiful.
Ah, likewise, likewise. Thank you so much. Ah, ciao. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode and engage with all the wisdom that was shared. If you enjoyed this podcast, please remember to leave a review on your podcast platform of choice, as this really helps this wisdom reach new people. If you have any questions or queries, please feel free to reach out to me via Instagram DM or send me an email. You can follow me on my personal account on Instagram at Josie, Josie _Thorne, THORNE, or you can follow Sync and Flow, my business accounts, at Sync, that's spelled SYNC _in_flow. Please feel free to reach out with any questions or queries you may have. Otherwise, get in contact to book a free discovery call to start your self-healing spiritual journey today. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now, loves.